One day, as Mr. Alexander Vance, renowned for his exceptional performance and immense wealth, entered a new corporate building in the city's central business district, he encountered a security guard whose arrogant gaze revealed nothing but social stratification. Alexander, who in his personal life was an extremely reserved and solitary individual, was so deeply engrossed in his work that he consistently avoided ostentatious displays of his affluence. He had meticulously built his life from a very humble background, establishing Vanguard Solutions, a formidable global tech company, through sheer relentless effort, unwavering determination, and a truly extraordinary intellect. There was not a trace of arrogance in his character. Instead, he was a man of profound etiquette and respect, always treating even those of seemingly lesser standing with utmost courtesy and patience. This particular morning, his mood was surprisingly light, almost buoyant. His company had recently finalized a monumental merger, a strategic integration valued at several $billion. He knew with absolute certainty that this merger would propel Vanguard Solutions to unprecedented heights in the business world. Yet a peculiar, almost melancholic, unease lingered in his heart. He secretly wished to appear as an ordinary visitor for a brief moment, to keep his true identity utterly concealed, merely to observe how people treated him when his immense wealth and formidable status were not apparent. For this precise reason, he had intentionally parked his sleek, expensive car a discreet distance away from the building's main entrance, choosing instead to enter through the pedestrian gate. His clothes were deliberately plain, his shoes were worn, subtly disguising their quality, and his quiet demeanor made him appear as nothing more than an average man, someone who would likely be overlooked or barely noticed. As he approached the building's imposing entrance, he was abruptly met by a young, tall, and undeniably fit security guard whose name tag proudly displayed Brendan Hayes. Brendan's uniform gleamed, impeccably pressed. His cap sat perfectly straight on his head, and his eyes held a distinct glint of authority and self-importance. Alexander offered a polite, almost imperceptible smile as he began to move past, indicating his intention to enter. But Brendan, stopping him with a sudden, sharp gesture, looked at him with an overtly arrogant stare. "Where do you think you're going?" he demanded forcefully, his voice laced with an unmistakable tone of disdain and disrespect, as if Alexander were attempting some unlawful or clandestine act. Alexander, however, replied with unwavering politeness and remarkable patience. "I have come to meet Mr. Julian Thorne. My appointment is for 9 o'clock. Julian Thorne was widely known as one of the city's wealthiest and most influential figures, the patriarch of Apex Capital, a powerful entity that was poised to enter a significant partnership with Alexander's Vanguard Solutions that very day. Brendan's gaze filled with even greater, almost theatrical, arrogance. He meticulously scrutinized Alexander's simple attire from head to toe. His unassuming jeans, the plain jacket, and his worn shoes, and then, with a contemptuous smirk that played cruelly on his lips, he uttered, "You? Meet Julian Thorne? Frankly, looking at you, it seems you'd barely be fit for cleaning duties here. Mr. Thorne only meets with exclusive individuals, and it's quite clear you are not among them." His words, sharp and dismissive, pierced Alexander like a searing arrow. Alexander's face hardened for a fleeting moment, a micro-expression of profound displeasure, but then he swiftly regained his composure. He was intimately familiar with such demoralizing incidents, situations where individuals made snap judgments and passed harsh verdicts based solely on superficial appearances of wealth and perceived status. Alexander, however, maintained a remarkably gentle and steady tone in his voice, his patience holding firm. "Look, my friend," he began, his voice calm. "I understand how I might appear at first glance, but my appointment is, in fact, confirmed. Could you please just inform Mr. Thorne that Julian Vance is here? I assure you, he will understand the importance of my presence." Brendan, emboldened by what he perceived as Alexander's meekness, responded with another sneering, condescending smile. "Listen, people like you arrive here daily, claiming to have appointments with Mr. Thorne. Someone of your standing doesn't even deserve to stand outside his office door, let alone enter." He then deliberately subjected Alexander to another slow, demeaning once-over, meticulously examining his clothes and worn footwear, and then shook his head with an air of odd, misplaced superiority. A cold, steely glint appeared deep within Alexander's eyes, a silent fire igniting, but he still held himself completely in check. He knew that showing overt anger or raising his voice at this moment would only validate Brendan's prejudiced assumptions and ultimately undermine his own objective. He took a deep, deliberate breath, his chest expanding almost imperceptibly, and then reiterated, his voice unwavering. "I am telling you for the very last time. I have a confirmed appointment. If you continue to obstruct my entry, I assure you, the consequences for you will be severe." Brendan, observing the quiet composure and unnerving stillness in Alexander's voice, misinterpreted it as a sign of weakness, failing to recognize it as a profound threat. Arrogance still fueled his actions. He casually placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder, a gesture of casual dominance, and then shoved him, saying, "Now that's enough. Get out of here immediately. If I see you here again, I won't hesitate for a second to call the police." Alexander's heart, usually a steady drum, seemed to pause for a beat. The forceful push on his shoulder was not merely a physical shove. It was a deeply personal assault on his dignity, his worth, and his identity. It was a stark reminder of the battles he had fought to climb from nothing. Yet, even this time, he showed no outward physical reaction. He knew, with absolute clarity, that his true response would not be articulated in words, but manifested through decisive action. He stepped back, his gaze fixed piercingly on Brendan. Brendan, still sporting his arrogant smirk, looked at him as if he had just won a significant victory. Alexander held Brendan's gaze for a long, unsettling moment, seeing only profound ignorance and misplaced arrogance reflected in his eyes. Then, with a slow, deliberate turn, he walked out of the building. His steps were measured and controlled, his silence profound, but within him, a tempest had begun to brew that would soon engulf and irrevocably transform everything. Brendan watched Alexander depart, the smug smile of triumph still plastered across his lips. Little did he know that he had just initiated the prelude to a most spectacular and agonizing downfall, a reckoning beyond his wildest nightmares. Alexander emerged from the building, his steps firm and resolute, imbued with a purpose that seemed to cut through the very air. Rain had begun to fall, a fine mist at first, then heavier drops splattering on his face. But he paid no heed, his senses focused elsewhere. He pulled his phone from the inner pocket of his jacket, a device that, to the untrained eye, appeared ordinary, even unassuming, but was, in fact, a highly secure, custom-built communication tool, designed for encrypted top-level directives. He selected a contact and brought the phone to his ear, the soft hum of the dial tone a prelude to the storm he was about to unleash. A voice, initially surprised, then quickly composed, answered, "Yes, Mr. Vance, is everything in order?" It was the voice of Liam Chun, his closest and most trusted associate, the astute head of operations at Global Dynamics, a man known for his unwavering loyalty and razor-sharp efficiency in executing complex commands. Alexander's voice was chillingly calm, devoid of any discernible emotion, as if he were merely issuing a complex, yet routine, command to a sophisticated AI. "Liam, I need you to initiate the immediate acquisition protocol for Titan Holdings. As in, right now. Complete buyout. Full control. There will be no negotiations. And confirm, the $2 billion partnership deal that was set to finalize today? It's definitively off the table. Completely. Notify my legal team to execute the hostile takeover with extreme prejudice. No room for compromise. I want this done by the end of today, no exceptions." Liam Chen, usually unflappable, was stunned into a brief silence on the other end of the line. "Sir, are you absolutely certain? Are you well? This will be the largest hostile acquisition in the history of the firm. We have no prior preparations for a move of this magnitude, and the market." Arthur cut him off, his voice maintaining its glacial composure, yet carrying an unmistakable edge of absolute finality. "I said immediately, Liam, without delay, and execute this as swiftly and silently as humanly possible." Liam Chen, recognizing the absolute, unquestionable authority in Alexander's tone, responded instantly, his voice now infused with a surge of adrenaline. "As you command, sir. I will instruct my team at once. Consider it done." The call ended. Alexander hung up the phone with a deliberate click, a sound that seemed to punctuate the sudden, dramatic shift in his reality. He took a deep, steadying breath, the cool, rain-laced air filling his lungs. His face remained outwardly composed, a mask of serene determination, but his eyes, deep-set and intense, held a cold, unwavering glint that Brendan would likely never have seen, a glint that spoke of power unleashed. He walked toward his car, a sleek, custom-built vehicle, parked some distance away, its dark exterior gleaming under the intensifying rain. The downpour had grown heavier, cascading in sheets, but Alexander neither sought shelter nor bothered to open an umbrella. He continued walking, seemingly unconcerned by the deluge, his expensive suit becoming soaked, his mind entirely focused. His mission was now clearer, more profound, and infinitely more personal than ever before. Inside the quiet, insulated luxury of his car, the muted roar of the city and the drumming of the rain provided a stark backdrop to his intense concentration. Arthur made a rapid series of precise phone calls, his fingers flying across the touchscreen with practiced ease. Each conversation was brief, direct, and filled with a quiet, undeniable authority that left no room for doubt or hesitation. He spoke to his chief legal officer, instructing them to initiate the necessary filings for a hostile takeover with unparalleled speed and discretion. He contacted his head of finance, commanding the immediate mobilization of unprecedented capital, trillions of dollars that would flood the market and overwhelm any resistance. The initial shock from his executive team quickly gave way to a surge of adrenaline, a palpable excitement, and unwavering loyalty. They understood implicitly that when Alexander Vance moved with this kind of cold, calculated resolve, when his voice held this particular tone of absolute finality, nothing, absolutely nothing, could possibly stand in his way. The rain outside intensified further, a relentless torrent, mirroring the storm of unprecedented financial activity he had just unleashed upon the unsuspecting city. As his car glided almost silently through the gleaming city streets, the wipers working furiously against the deluge, Alexander's mind raced with a chilling, almost surgical precision. He thought of all the times he or others who resembled him, or those from similar humble beginnings, had faced similar dismissals, had been carelessly overlooked or coldly judged simply because they didn't fit a predetermined, narrow societal mold. This wasn't just about Brendan's petty arrogance. It was about a deeply ingrained, systemic arrogance, a pervasive belief that superficial status, inherited wealth, or outward appearance defined true worth. Titan Holdings, with its generations of old money, its rigid, antiquated hierarchy, and its self-important exclusionary culture, was a perfect, almost poetic symbol of that flawed and unjust mentality. It was utterly ripe for disruption, for a complete dismantling and rebirth. He vividly envisioned the shocked, horrified faces, the desperate scramble for control among the old guard, the inevitable and spectacular downfall of those who had so carelessly, so cruelly judged. A grim satisfaction settled within him, not of revenge, but of undeniable, righteous justice about to be served. Meanwhile, high above the bustling, rain-swept city, in his opulent corner office, meticulously designed to exude power and exclusivity, Mr. Richard Thorne, the venerable CEO of Titan Holdings, sat utterly oblivious to the impending cataclysm. He was deeply engaged in a routine video conference with his international partners from Zurich and Hong Kong, confidently discussing ambitious expansion plans, outlining Titan's seemingly unassailable market dominance, and enjoying the deferential nods of his counterparts. He chuckled at a particularly dry joke from a Swiss banker, adjusted his gleaming designer glasses, and exuded an air of impenetrable success, of a man firmly in control of his vast destiny. He was a man who genuinely believed himself untouchable, his sprawling empire absolutely secure, built on foundations that had withstood generations. He had no idea, absolutely no idea, that the Mr. Julian Vance he was casually expecting for a 9 a.m. meeting, The man he had vaguely heard was merely the head of some upstart tech firm, and whom he assumed was a minor player, was about to become the precise architect of his company's utter destruction. Richard's attentive assistant had merely noted a minor delay with Mr. Vance's arrival, attributing it benignly to the unusually heavy morning traffic. He had waved off the concern, entirely unaware that the man he was so casually waiting for had just been summarily dismissed from his very own lobby, a mere stone's throw away from his executive sanctuary. Suddenly, Richard's private, red-button line, usually reserved for only the most critical and catastrophic calls, began to ring insistently, a shrill, jarring sound that cut through the polished calm of his office. He answered, a flicker of irritation initially crossing his face, annoyed at the interruption to his grand plans. His chief financial officer's voice was frantic, almost incoherent, laced with raw panic. Richard, it's InnovateX. They're initiating a hostile takeover. They've filed papers with the SEC. It's Julian Vance. He's buying us. Richard's blood ran cold. A sudden, icy jolt. Julian Vance? Who on earth is Julian Vance? What in heaven's name are you talking about? This is utterly absurd. It's impossible. He slammed the phone down onto its receiver, his mind reeling, struggling desperately to comprehend the impossible words. InnovateX, a mere tech company? He barely knew their name, considered them a trivial player in the vast financial landscape. How, by any conceivable means, could they possibly be acquiring Titan Holdings, a legacy institution worth tens of billions, a pillar of the financial world? He furiously called his chief legal officer, then his investment bankers, then his head of acquisitions, demanding immediate answers, but the chaos had already begun, spreading like a virulent plague through the very heart of his corporation. The massive screens in his opulent office, usually displaying reassuring stock market data and positive financial trends, now flashed horrifying news alerts in bold, red letters. InnovateX Solutions launches unprecedented hostile takeover bid for Titan Holdings, market stunned. His company's stock price, which had been steadily climbing for decades, plummeted dramatically, a brutal and utterly public visual representation of his entire empire collapsing in real time, minute by agonizing minute. Within what felt like mere heartbeats, the once imposing lobby of Titan Holdings, previously a symbol of impenetrable power and corporate prestige, became a chaotic whirlwind of desperate activity. Phones rang incessantly, voices rose in panicked shouts, and executives, their faces contorted with terror, rushed aimlessly in all directions, their expensive suits disheveled. Brendan, the security guard, stood bewildered at his post, utterly paralyzed, watching the terrifying scene unfold. He saw the live news reports flashing on his small security monitor, displaying InnovateX's aggressive logo and the name Julian Vance prominently displayed next to shocking headlines. A profound chill, colder than the heaviest winter frost, ran down his spine. Just then, the main revolving doors hissed open once more. Arthur Hayes, no longer in his humble, unassuming attire, but now clad in a perfectly fitted, exquisitely expensive dark suit that bespoke immense power, strode purposefully in. He was flanked by Liam Chen, his calm and collected head of operations, and a formidable phalanx of stern-faced corporate lawyers and impeccably dressed financial advisors. His presence now radiated an undeniable aura of absolute power and quiet authority that seemed to fill and dominate the entire lobby, silencing the frantic clamor. Brendan's eyes widened to the size of saucers, stretched in sheer terror. He recognized Arthur instantly, the man he had verbally abused, dismissed, and physically pushed just a mere few hours ago. His arrogant smirk, which had lingered on his face since the morning, vanished completely, replaced by a ghastly, deathly pallor. He tried desperately to speak, to utter some apology or explanation, but no words would come, his throat constricted by overwhelming fear. Just then, David Lane, the branch manager, rushed into the lobby, his phone still pressed frantically to his ear, his face a mask of utter desperation and disbelief. He looked up, his eyes meeting Arthur's, and froze, his body rigid with shock. The horrifying realization of what had transpired, of the monumental, irreversible mistake he and Brendan had made, slammed into him with devastating, bone-shattering force. His world, too, was crumbling. Arthur walked directly to the reception desk, his gaze unwavering as he met Brendan's terrified, pleading eyes. He didn't waste a single word on Brendan. Instead, he turned, his posture commanding attention, and addressed the now paralyzed, stunned staff, his voice calm but resonating with an unyielding authority that instantly silenced the last whispers of panic. "My name is Julian Vance," he stated, his voice carrying clearly and powerfully across the marble floor, filling every corner of the vast space. As of this precise moment, InnovateX Solutions is the new, sole owner of Titan Holdings. He paused for a long, dramatic beat, allowing the full, crushing weight of his words to sink in, to be fully absorbed by every terrified ear. "My team," he continued, gesturing to the phalanx of professionals behind him, "will now begin a comprehensive and immediate review of all operations, including, most critically, all personnel. Let it be unequivocally clear to everyone present. InnovateX values innovation, uncompromising integrity, and, above all, absolute respect for every single individual. Every person, regardless of their position, their background, their appearance, or their previous perceived status, deserves to be treated with fundamental dignity." He looked pointedly, his gaze lingering with profound meaning, first at Brendan, then at David Lane, their faces contorted in agony. Any behavior contrary to these core values, any act of prejudice or disrespect, will not be tolerated. This company will henceforth operate purely on merit, not on bias, not on prejudice, and certainly not on superficial judgment. The monumental defeat of Mr. Richard Thorne was swift, brutal, and utterly public. He was forced to confront Julian in what was now Julian's own office, the very symbol of his lost empire. The transition of power was swift, ruthless, and entirely without mercy. Thorne, a man who had meticulously built his vast empire on generations of traditional power structures, rigid hierarchies, and subtle exclusions, found himself stripped of everything. His company, his influence, his pride, by someone he had so carelessly allowed to be dismissed at his own doorstep just a few hours prior. Julian, now sitting comfortably in Thorne's opulent executive chair, felt a profound sense of quiet justice, a deep satisfaction that transcended mere personal vindication. This acquisition, he knew, was more than just a multi-billion-dollar business transaction. It was a powerful, undeniable statement. It was a living testament to the profound idea that true wealth lies not merely in financial assets or market cap, but in the strength of one's character, in the unwavering ability to see beyond superficialities, and in the absolute, unyielding commitment to fundamental principles of respect and equality. He understood that this single act, born from a moment of prejudice, would reverberate far beyond the walls of this building, sending a clear message to the entire corporate world. In the following weeks, InnovateX Solutions, under Julian Vance's direct and vigilant leadership, began the meticulous and far-reaching process of transforming Titan Holdings. The old, rigid hierarchies and outdated corporate structures were systematically dismantled, brick by painstaking brick. Talent was actively sought out and cultivated from previously overlooked places, bringing in diverse perspectives and fresh ideas that revitalized stagnant departments. The polished, cold, and exclusionary lobby that once reflected a narrow, biased view of success was completely reimagined, redesigned, and reborn as a vibrant, inclusive space, bustling with a new energy and a palpable sense of belonging. One day, Julian, now fully integrated into his new headquarters, walked past the now renovated reception desk. A new, warm, and genuinely welcoming face greeted him with a bright smile and sincere courtesy. He paused, his gaze falling to the exact spot on the pristine marble floor where his business card had been so contemptuously tossed just weeks before. He allowed a faint, knowing smile to touch his lips. This time, there was no dust, no coldness, no lingering shadow of prejudice. Only the shimmering promise of a profoundly different, more equitable future. This was not just the acquisition of a company. It was the birth of a new legacy, a powerful testament built not on inherited privilege or outdated traditions, but on the enduring foundation of a hard-learned lesson delivered in the most unexpected and dramatic way possible. The transformation of Sterling Financial Group into InnovateX Solutions Financial Division was not merely a superficial rebranding. It was a profound, systemic overhaul that began from the very core of its operations. Julian Vance, now operating from what was formerly Richard Thorne's grand office, meticulously initiated a series of radical reforms. He started by dismantling the old, rigid hierarchies that had stifled innovation and perpetuated implicit biases. Talent was actively sought out and cultivated from previously overlooked places, bringing in diverse perspectives and fresh ideas that instantly revitalized stagnant departments and challenged outdated norms. The polished, cold, and exclusionary lobby that once reflected a narrow, biased view of success was completely reimagined. It was redesigned with warm, inviting tones, comfortable seating, and an open layout, reborn as a vibrant, inclusive space bustling with a new energy and a palpable sense of genuine belonging. Even the background music shifted from classical string quartets to a more diverse, uplifting instrumental selection, subtly signaling a change in atmosphere. Julian understood that changing a company's name and policies was only the first step. The real challenge lay in transforming the mindset of its people, especially those who had thrived within the old system. He personally oversaw the restructuring of human resources, implementing mandatory diversity and inclusion training programs that were not just token gestures but deeply impactful, multi-day workshops. These sessions were designed not merely to check a box, but to genuinely challenge unconscious biases, promote empathy, and foster a true understanding of different perspectives among all employees, from the newest hire to veteran executives. He established a new client dignity protocol, a comprehensive framework ensuring that every customer, regardless of their perceived status, their background, their appearance, or the size of their account, received impeccable, courteous, and profoundly respectful service. Mystery shoppers were employed, and customer feedback surveys were meticulously analyzed to ensure compliance and identify any lingering areas of bias. He appointed new leadership, carefully promoting talented individuals who had often been overlooked due to the very biases he now so ruthlessly dismantled. Ms. Anya Sharma, a brilliant young executive of South Asian descent who had quietly excelled in the risk assessment department for years but had been passed over for promotion multiple times, was elevated to head of corporate strategy. Mr. Ben Carter, a veteran finance analyst who had spent his career in the shadows, known for his sharp mind but humble demeanor, was appointed Chief Operating Officer. These were individuals who understood the value of hard work and fairness, chosen not for their connections but for their undeniable merit and ethical compass. The subtle whispers of prejudice that once permeated the grand halls of Sterling Financial were systematically rooted out, replaced by an atmosphere of genuine meritocracy, mutual respect, and palpable enthusiasm. Employee satisfaction surveys, which had previously shown stagnation, began to trend upwards, with staff reporting a renewed sense of purpose and belonging. Meanwhile, the repercussions of the hostile takeover continued to ripple through the financial district, affecting those directly involved. Brenda Hayes, the former receptionist, found herself utterly unemployable in the high-stakes world of corporate finance. Her public dismissal, fueled by the viral nature of the incident's security video, which inevitably found its way onto social media, despite initial attempts at suppression, became a chilling cautionary tale across the entire industry. Her once carefully cultivated image of superiority was shattered, replaced by public scorn and a profound personal crisis. She learned, in the harshest way possible, the devastating long-term consequences of casual prejudice and overt disdain. David Lane, the branch manager who had enabled Brenda's behavior, faced a similar, irreversible fate. His once promising career in finance was irrevocably damaged, his professional network dissolving overnight. They watched from afar, from the desolate periphery of the industry, as Julian Vance's InnovateX Solutions transformed Sterling Financial Group into a shining, almost miraculous, example of a progressive, highly profitable, and truly inclusive financial institution. The irony was a bitter pill for them to swallow. Richard Thorne, the former CEO and patriarch of Sterling Financial, retreated entirely from public life. The humiliation of losing his family's legacy company, not to a rival titan, but to a man he allowed to be disrespected at his own front desk, was unbearable. He became a recluse in his sprawling estate, the silence of his vast rooms amplifying the echo of his defeat. He saw his once impenetrable empire, built on generations of tradition, now thriving under Julian's visionary leadership, a constant, agonizing reminder of his own failure to adapt, to see, and to value true merit over superficial status. The old guard, those who had sided with Thorne and his outdated views, slowly found themselves marginalized, their influence waning as InnovateX's new, progressive approach proved undeniably successful in the market. Some retired quietly, others adapted reluctantly, but the era they represented was definitively over. Julian understood that his true legacy wouldn't just be measured by the billions in acquired assets or the soaring stock prices of InnovateX. It would be measured by the powerful, transformative message sent throughout the entire industry. That dignity is priceless, that respect is non-negotiable, and that true power lies not in inherited privilege or outward displays of status, but in the unwavering integrity of one's character, in the ability to see the worth in every human being, and in the profound commitment to fundamental principles of fairness and equality. This incident, born from a seemingly minor moment of casual prejudice, had not only become a powerful catalyst for transformative change within one corporation but served as a beacon, a guiding light, for others to follow. Julian Vance, the black CEO who had quietly endured humiliation, had ultimately reshaped an empire, proving, beyond any doubt, that justice sometimes arrives silently, but with undeniable and world-changing force. His actions reverberated far beyond boardrooms and balance sheets, inspiring countless individuals across various industries to challenge the status quo and demand a more equitable environment. The story became a whispered legend, a testament to the power of one individual's quiet resolve against systemic arrogance. The repercussions of Julian Vance's decisive actions extended far beyond the immediate shockwaves felt within Sterling Financial Group. Across the global financial landscape, the acquisition of a venerable institution like Titan Holdings by InnovateX Solutions became a compelling case study, dissected in business schools and boardrooms alike. The story wasn't merely about a hostile takeover. It was about the profound and swift consequences of unchecked corporate bias. Competitor firms, initially skeptical, began to implement their own rigorous diversity and inclusion programs, not out of sudden altruism, but from a newfound, pragmatic understanding that ignoring such issues could lead to devastating financial and reputational losses. Julian's bold move had, almost single-handedly, forced a critical self-reflection within an industry traditionally resistant to change. Julian, while still intensely focused on the operational integration of the two companies, found himself increasingly sought after. Invitations poured in from prestigious business conferences, major universities, and even government bodies seeking his insights on ethical leadership and inclusive corporate culture. He accepted a select few, choosing platforms where his message could resonate most effectively. His public appearances were characterized by his calm demeanor, sharp intellect, and an unwavering commitment to the principles he embodied. He spoke not of his personal triumph, but of the systemic issues that needed addressing, emphasizing that true innovation stemmed from diverse perspectives and an environment where every talent was recognized and valued. One particular afternoon, while reviewing performance metrics for the newly integrated client services division, Julian received an unexpected call. It was from Mr. Richard Thorne. The former CEO, stripped of his empire, sounded weary, his voice devoid of its former arrogance. "Mr. Vance?" Thorne began, a hesitant, almost fragile tone in his voice. I owe you a genuine apology, not merely for the incident with Brenda, but for a lifetime of blind spots. I saw what I expected to see, not what was truly there. You taught me a lesson I should have learned decades ago, but never had the humility to grasp. Julian listened in silence, a rare moment of personal vulnerability for both men. I've started volunteering at a local community center, Thorne continued, a hint of something Julian recognized as genuine remorse in his voice. Helping small businesses, many owned by people I would have previously dismissed without a second thought. It's humbling work. Julian, without offering forgiveness, simply acknowledged Thorne's words, a silent recognition of the difficult journey of self-reflection. He knew that true change was a process, not a singular event. The positive ripple effect extended beyond the corporate realm. InnovateX Solutions, under Julian's guidance, launched a groundbreaking initiative, Pathways to Progress. This program partnered with inner-city schools and community colleges, offering mentorship, scholarships, and internship opportunities to underprivileged students, particularly those from diverse backgrounds interested in finance and technology. The goal was to dismantle the very barriers Julian himself had faced, ensuring that talent, wherever it originated, had a clear path to opportunity. He personally mentored several young students, dedicating precious hours to guide them, sharing not just his business acumen, but the profound life lessons he had learned. One evening, while at a Pathways to Progress mentorship event, Julian observed a familiar face from his past. It was Brendan Hayes, the security guard who had dismissed him. Brendan, looking noticeably older, his uniform replaced by plain civilian clothes, was now volunteering at the event, helping with registration. He carried himself with a new, quiet humility, his former arrogance completely gone. Their eyes met across the bustling room. Brendan hesitated, then slowly approached Julian, his hands clasped nervously. "Mr. Vance," he murmured, his voice barely audible. I don't expect you to remember me, but I was the guard that morning. I was wrong, terribly wrong. I let my own ignorance and prejudice dictate my actions. I lost my job, and deservedly so. But seeing what you've built here, seeing these young faces, it made me realize the cost of my blindness." He paused, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. "Thank you, Mr. Vance. Thank you for the hardest, most necessary lesson of my life." Julian, seeing the genuine remorse in Brendan's eyes, offered a soft, understanding nod. No words were needed. The unspoken acknowledgement passed between them, a testament to the transformative power of humility and self-awareness. InnovateX Solutions, under Julian's unwavering vision, flourished. It became known not just for its financial prowess and technological breakthroughs, but for its pioneering commitment to a truly equitable and inclusive workplace. The media, which had initially sensationalized the takeover, now praised Julian Vance as a transformative leader, a beacon of modern corporate values. His story, once a personal humiliation, had evolved into a powerful narrative of redemption and systemic change, inspiring countless individuals across various industries to challenge the status quo and demand a more just environment. Julian, however, remained grounded. He never forgot the cold thud of his business card hitting the floor. It served as a constant, quiet reminder of the systemic biases that still existed and the ongoing work required to dismantle them. His mornings, once filled with the quiet contemplation of his vast empire, now began with the profound satisfaction of knowing he was building not just wealth, but a legacy of true belonging. This was not merely the birth of a new company. It was the dawn of a new era, proving that sometimes the most unexpected individuals, facing the most casual acts of prejudice, possess the inherent strength and unyielding will to orchestrate a fundamental shift in the world around them. And in that quiet, powerful transformation, Julian Vance found a purpose far greater than any fortune, a victory that resonated not in boardrooms, but in the heart of every person who dared to dream beyond imposed limits. This was his true empire. The seismic shift initiated by Julian Vance at InnovateX Solutions resonated far beyond the financial district, creating ripples that touched diverse sectors and communities. The Pathways to Progress initiative, initially a local program, quickly gained national recognition. Its success stories, once quiet whispers, became powerful testimonials of transformative change. Students from marginalized communities, previously deterred by systemic barriers, now saw clear, achievable routes into the elite fields of finance and technology. Julian himself became a living embodiment of their aspirations, a constant reminder that with talent, perseverance, and the right opportunities, any ceiling could be shattered. Julian's commitment was not merely financial. It was deeply personal. He spent countless hours personally mentoring young participants in the Pathways to Progress program. He shared not only his vast business acumen and strategic insights but also candidly spoke of his own experiences with dismissal and prejudice. He taught them resilience, the importance of integrity, and the power of quiet defiance in the face of injustice. These sessions, held in renovated community centers that InnovateX funded, were always packed, with eager young minds hanging on his every word. He often emphasized, "Your worth is not determined by someone else's narrow perception of you. It's defined by your character, your effort, and your unwavering belief in your own potential." The ripple effect of InnovateX's new culture began to manifest in unexpected ways across the industry. Other major corporations, observing the undeniable success and enhanced public image of InnovateX, started reevaluating their own internal diversity and inclusion strategies. Hiring practices shifted, with a greater emphasis on blind resumes and skills-based assessments rather than relying solely on Ivy League degrees or traditional networks. Boardrooms, once homogeneous bastions of inherited power, slowly began to diversify, acknowledging the tangible benefits of varied perspectives. The subtle yet pervasive culture of bias, which Julian had identified and meticulously dismantled within Sterling Financial, was now being scrutinized and challenged across the corporate landscape. Julian's relationship with Liam Chun, his head of operations, deepened significantly. Liam, a shrewd strategist in his own right, had initially been loyal to Julian's vision out of professional respect. Now, he witnessed the profound human impact of Julian's leadership. Liam became a fierce advocate for the new culture, often echoing Julian's principles in internal meetings and public statements. "This isn't just about doing good. It's about doing smart business," Liam would often tell hesitant department heads, emphasizing the undeniable link between an inclusive culture and increased profitability and innovation. Their partnership, forged in the crucible of the hostile takeover, evolved into an unbreakable bond built on shared values and mutual respect. Brenda Hayes and David Lane, the former receptionist and branch manager, who had initially triggered the monumental shift, found their lives irrevocably altered. Brenda, after numerous unsuccessful attempts to find comparable employment, eventually found work in a small, local nonprofit. The experience, vastly different from her previous corporate life, slowly began to chip away at her ingrained prejudices. She often encountered individuals who, like Julian, had faced unfair judgments based on appearance. The bitter lessons of humility were harsh, but over time, they began to foster a nascent empathy within her. David Lane, similarly stripped of his former status, struggled with deep remorse and professional ruin. He eventually dedicated his time to consulting for small businesses, many owned by minorities, unknowingly following a path similar to that of the humbled Richard Thorne. The experience offered him a stark, first-hand education on the systemic barriers he had once so carelessly upheld. Richard Thorne, in his quieter, more reflective life, found a surprising sense of purpose in his newfound humility. His volunteering work at the community center, initially a gesture of atonement, became a genuine passion. He often spoke to aspiring entrepreneurs, sharing not just business advice, but the critical importance of character and integrity, drawing directly from his own painful lessons. He occasionally crossed paths with David Lane at these community events, and a silent, mutual understanding would pass between them, two men irrevocably changed by the unforeseen power of a single moment of disrespect. Julian Vance, amidst all this profound transformation, remained remarkably grounded. He never allowed the immense power he wielded to corrupt his core principles. The cold thud of his business card hitting the floor served as a constant, quiet reminder of the systemic biases that still existed in the world, and the ongoing, vigilant work required to dismantle them. His mornings, once filled with the sole contemplation of his vast corporate empire, now began with a profound and deeply personal satisfaction, knowing he was building not just wealth, but a lasting legacy of true belonging for countless others. This wasn't merely the birth of a new company. It was the dawn of a new era, proving that sometimes the most unexpected individuals, facing the most casual acts of prejudice, possessed the inherent strength and unyielding will to orchestrate a fundamental shift in the very fabric of the world around them. And in that quiet, powerful transformation, Julian Vance found a purpose far greater than any fortune, a victory that resonated not merely in corporate boardrooms and surging balance sheets, but in the heart of every person who dared to dream beyond imposed limits and sought to define their own worth. This was his true, enduring empire,